So now it'll work. And see, we get it like that. And it looks a little weird, right? Because we have that white layer. So here I'm going to scale it. I'm going to hold Alt and Shift. So just scale it like equally like that. And do that. So I don't need libraries here. And like, the main one you want to look at here is your layers. And make sure right away that you've got all your layers. And if you notice, we do. We have Make 2D, hidden lines, curves, buildings, and that. So one thing I do right away that I've gotten in the habit, which is really useful, see how it's colored everything based off the layer? I like to grab everything and then just color it all like black. So you can give it a color here. The fill, I'm just going to give it no fill. Like none. And make sure everything has like a black fill. So now I can at least see all my lines, right? But that doesn't look like a very good diagram, right? It's like you can't even really tell what's going on. So the next thing I do is grab all the ones that say hidden and move them to the bottom. And the visible ones should go up. And then the cool thing with this is now if you click there, that's going to grab all of those lines. And then I can go here and start making that a much thinner line just by clicking this. Let's make it like 0.25 for now. And then you grab these, make it 0.25. You can do this all at once, but I'm just doing them one at a time to show you. So now all of our hidden lines are a little bit lighter. And then we can grab like this, holding Shift, and grab all of them and change it from, if you go to stroke, you can make them dashed lines. And then let me zoom in here so you can see. And right now it's set to be that gap, but we can do like 5 and 5 and click out. And so now we have that. And so see, right away now it's starting to help bring the other ones forward. And let's say like our site wasn't supposed to be so intense. It was supposed to be more about the building. So then we can go to the layers and grab site and then make that like thin. Or maybe that's too thin, so we bring it up. And then our building, maybe we make the base of the building really heavy, or we can add. So the main thing is you want to adjust these till you get them where you like them. Maybe the site, we don't care about all the back ones. So site maybe doesn't even have backgrounds, and it's just like that. Can you guys see that pretty well? Yeah, it's a lot easier now with a huge screen. So we've got this looking somewhat good. So now let's do this. This is really what I do is once I get the basic geometry that we had in Rhino looking like halfway the way I want it, I just lock all of them. And then now I know I'm not going to accidentally mess it up. And you can come on top with the new layer. And now we can zoom in. And if you wanted to, oh no, it's got that zoom set up now. I'll have to figure out where that setting lives and change it. So you can use the pen tool. And I'm going to draw with like a 1. And then give this like a much heavier boundary. And I'm tracing the line. The cool thing is it's going to snap to all of them. Because it actually is vector. And notice how sharp it is as I zoom in. If you wanted to, or if it was really complex, you could just select them and like copy them, paste them in place, and move it to the other layer. To move something to another layer, you just grab here. Once it's selected, and you drag that little square to another layer. So if we wanted to make that go to that layer, just like it is in InDesign, you can do that. And then if you click that little circle, we'll grab everything on that layer, and we can make that heavier. So see, now we're starting to really make that the emphasis. And right now I've only adjusted line weights, and I've only really drawn one line. Like if you wanted to, you could grab that edge on the site. So now we could, the cool thing is if you hold Alt and use the little, and you click any of these, it will do the opposite to all the other layers. So see here, it can like block every layer except that one. So if you wanted to, you could choose that line, that line, that line, there, here. And we could make that like a little bit heavier. That one needs to go back. And so you can start playing with the lines until you're happy with them. And then once that's good, lock those and keep them in the background. Now you have something to start working with. Let's say I wanted to create a cool diagram showing inside that space. Maybe there needs to be one highlighting this little area in here. So I can make a layer that lives there in between these. And then using the pen, I can grab here and then flip that so it has a fill, and on the fill give it like a color. So you can grab maybe like a red or something. And I recommend like don't go crazy with like the colors. Like try and keep it like less is actually better when it comes to diagrams, because they start reading like a thing, like a whole series, rather than trying to do 20 colors in one and 20 colors in the next one. Keep them, don't try and make them look realistic. If you want to, you can like add a little bit of shading. I don't know why I did that. That was weird. So, oh, that's not even readable up there. So somewhere around here. So we have that now, and then that's weird. Go away. I have this weird thing here now. There. So you can use this if you wanted to add, like, maybe this is about some sort of effect coming through here. So here we can flip these. We can grab this guy. Oops. So I want that line to be thicker. And stroke is going to be like your best friend, because here you can make this one dashed. We can make the dashes like 15, and then you can use the arrowheads, and it's like got direction. So maybe we flip it so it's going the other way, and then this lets you shrink the size of the head. Oops, wrong one. And then it could be it ends right on the tip of the line, or that's where the base of the arrow starts. That's what this setting does. So you can start playing around with these, and if you wanted to have them on like different layers, or maybe it's about coloring this shape here with like green, or making things go out. So let's say this isn't red, these need to be blue, because this is how it's gonna capture. Oh, let's say it's about capturing wind, right? So wind should be curvy, right? So it shouldn't be straight like it is here. So I'm gonna move this so you can see what I'm doing. The black arrow, some people get confused on these two. There's the black arrow and then the white arrow. So the black one is a normal selection tool, exactly like it is in Photoshop and InDesign. The white one is called the direct select. So this one is kind of, the black one will give whatever you click. Think of that as like in SketchUp when you have a grouped object, it grabs the whole thing. This one is like overrides the general setting, and it'll click exactly what you selected. So it lets you go into that line and click just that point. And if I click just the point, nowadays you get this, so you can use this to give it like a radius. So like the farther you drag that, the wider the radius becomes. The other way you could do it is you can click that point, and then up here you convert it into a curve. And notice, just like in Rhino, we had these little control points. So these ones, the shorter you make them, the more intense the curve is, and then the longer you make them, the smoother it makes the curve. So play around with these and see, now we can start getting like a really, oh, I just moved it like crazy. So see, you can do that. You can move the point. You can move the little control arrows. So play with those and see how you like them. And then maybe now, since this is supposed to be, let's go to my swatches. So the swatches are pretty cool because you can use these. I like this one to get what you want. And maybe you don't need it to be so thick if it's just wind or something. Or maybe it looks like it's going in there and it gets cut off by that. So there's a bunch of ways you could do it. We can grab this guy now and use that swatch. Oops. And let's say you wanted to draw the icons that look like water was there. So this is a really useful tool within InDesign, is that you can make, Illustrator, you can vectorize any sort of little shape and then use it to create diagrams and bring it into the same type of look that we have here. So I think what's weird with this is that it's not behind those there. So which one is that? There, that's where I want it. So some of those are kind of weird, but we can play around with that. Oh, I turned it on accident. So there. If you go online, it doesn't matter if it's vector or not. I'm going to show you right now how to. So let's say we want wind icon, and what I typically search for is PNG, so that way I at least get like a white background. Sometimes they're transparent, but sometimes they're not. Let's say if you love this icon, and this is a good one for doing this trick. So you just copy it and then you just paste it right in. So sometimes that'll happen. If that happens, the easiest way around it is just to save the image. Save image as whatever you want on the desktop. And then here you place it. See, I've got it. But see, it's transparent because it's a PNG, but now it totally throws off my diagram because I'm like, I don't want black wind. I want it to match the arrow, so I want it to be blue, right? So how could we do that? We can't click these because see, it's telling you can't change what's in there. If we zoom in, you'll notice that it's vector. It's not vectorized, right? It's all pixelated, so it's raster based because it's an image. So we need to tell InDesign to start calculating this and draw a vector profile. So to do that, you use this button right here. It's called Image Trace. The cool thing with this is once you click it, it does stuff without asking you anything, and see, it's already worked. So this one was really good because I had a white background and it was pretty clear already. Normally you don't get ones that nice and you have to go into the other settings. So if you go here, it's weird because it doesn't show you any more than that, but there's a bunch of options you can use, and it doesn't even have a label to it. It's just this little icon here. But if you click it, that gives you all the image trace options, and so you can see if you want to see like black and white or color, or there's tons of ways you can adjust it. And then advanced, you can tell it to ignore the white, which we didn't have white background, but it'll do that. And then when you're happy, you can tell it to trace. Oh no, I have preview live, so it's not going to trace. When you're done, you hit expand. See, right now it's still like a group thing like that. If you hit expand, you'll see now it was, I don't know if you noticed, but it went in there. Now if I double click, I have like these shapes. See the white? I don't want the white. I can just delete that. Here I have these shapes, and notice now it tells me it's filled with black. So if I grab all three of these, I can double click this, or you can go over here to your swatches and give it the blue. And see, now we have the blue that we had that we wanted. And I can shrink this. Well, I guess that I want it. I don't know if you guys want it. And then if you want to rotate it, you can just flip it. And we can say like, that's the winds coming across perfectly through that channel somehow. And it's going to work. But let's say you didn't get so lucky and you had a different one. So let's find like sun icon. I'll pick sun because you'll probably get different ones for this. So here, that doesn't look like it has a nice background. But you'll see, it doesn't matter. Because when you paste it, right now the reason we're seeing through it is because I pasted it in a layer that's behind. But if I make a new layer on top, you will see, so here I'm going to grab that guy and move him up. I can't see my building now, right? So I want to be able to cut this out and make it so it's nice and clean. I don't want a blue sun, I want just a vector sun. So we're going to do the same thing. You click it, image trace, it went away. See, this time it wasn't a nice clean image. Usually that's what will happen. You click image trace and it's like totally wrong. And it's like terrible. And like in this case, it couldn't see those edges because it doesn't know. If we go into the settings, you'll see right now it's using the default stuff. So it's using black and white. So it doesn't see black at all. It's only like a yellow. So that threshold never got to it. So it just made the whole thing white. So if you change it to color, you'll see now it actually sees it, but it's seeing all these white edges. If you click this, ignore white, it'll look for the white and just cut it out for you. So rather than make a shape that's white that you then immediately just delete out, you can just tell it ignore the white for now. And it won't even make it anymore. And then if we zoom in, this one looks pretty cool. But see there, this one's like a weird shape. And that's what I was looking for, to find one so I can show you here. If that starts to happen, especially when you're doing silhouettes of people, because they're way more complicated than an icon, you use these guys. So right now, we're limiting like the colors. So sometimes this will have an effect, because you tell it try and find less colors than more, because then it'll make broader shapes. This one, paths, the less paths you use, the more jagged your object will become. The more paths you use, the smoother the shapes become. And it's not like you always use one or the other, it just depends what it is that you're tracing. So sometimes like an icon is more jagged, sometimes it's like more, you want it to follow it smoother. And here you saw how fast it was. So you can play, see there, somewhere in the middle it made it, where it understood. Corners, you can have less corners and it will round stuff off more, or you can have more, it'll make it more jagged. You'll get to a point where you have too many and it gets kind of weird. And then noise, I don't ever really use a lot of noise, but sometimes like it's so sharp that like it's finding shapes within like something that's just like a tone, and you don't want it to do that, so you make it the image a little bit noisier so that it can kind of blend across. And then the method is, when you see two things coming up against each other, do you want it to end one shape and start another shape, or do you want them to just create all the paths as big shapes all overlapping like a collage? So for our case, we don't want a collage, we just want it to cut it out. Snap curves to lines and then ignore the white. If not, we get that. Ignoring the white, we get that. So then once you're happy, you hit expand, and then we zoom out and see we got that. So if you're happy, you can leave it like that. If not, we can go into it and select it. And notice now we have that new shape. We have, oops, the new color. And is it in my swatches? No. But if you do this, you just drag it on there, it'll add it to your swatches. So you can always use that. One of like the coolest tricks that I found out kind of by complete chance is in your swatches, you can do this. You can make a color group. And that's basically like a little folder that has whatever things you have. One thing I didn't know you could do which I found out later, is if you select a bunch of objects and they have different colors in there and you hit new color group, it makes a group of all those colors and it makes a little swatch for you. So if you think about it, if you're trying to come up with a cool color palette to do your diagrams in, you can search online and find a color palette like real easy. And let's say like you're working and you just feel this is like the best color palette for your project. You can do this: copy image, paste, and just like we did, image trace. It's going to look weird, but you don't care because you're going to go here. All I'm looking for is these squares. So I'm going to tell it use color, let it sit for a minute. You'll see since it's at 30, and here we'll get like a million edges. So and as you start dropping that down, you'll see that will get more and more broad. So I'm going to ignore that side. I'm going to tell it ignore white because I know I don't want white. And that's what I want. So once you have that, I can make my color palette exactly the way I would want by doing this. So now I'm going to expand it. That way it actually makes all the shapes. I'm going to go into this one and watch this. I'm going to select those. So I have only those selected. And now you come over here and you just say new color group and call this one like palette 1. And it just makes a little swatch for each one. Now once you have that, you can just delete this whole thing. And I can click my sun and then make him that color yellow instead. I don't know why you want to do that, but if you needed that, and then we can click this guy and say no, he should be this blue because that's a nicer blue, and this line needs to be that blue, and those guys, when we go in here, switch to the fill. So now we can start using a color palette either from, let's say it was like a client's color palette, or you took a cool picture and you want to pull the colors out of the picture, you can do that. Or you find a color board that you really like somewhere and you want to use to match. Or let's say it's like at your office and you have the interior design with all their colors and you want to match those. All you need is one of their color boards and you just do it.
Illustrator also has really cool color books.
Yeah. So if you click this guy, you can see there's thousands of books that are already made, and these have like thousands and thousands of colors. So if you go into like, you can go to like earth tones, foods, whatever, and then if you go to color books, you see like Pantone and the HKS like Z or N, or, and then when you click on these, like these are the pastels, and I mean you'll find more colors than you know what to do with. So that's an option. This is another way you can make your own to be whatever you want. And then the idea is, once you're done with one diagram, the way I would recommend doing it is set it so that you can turn off the layers for that diagram like that, and then now you can make the sun diagram, and then you have something like that about solar exposure, and then maybe you have another one that's about views, and all you need to do is draw like a line using like your pen. And then this guy is heavier. And then that can be green. Oops. So then maybe this is how you start talking about I always do that. Oops, I didn't like that. So maybe that starts becoming part of that, or I don't know. You can color that whole shape there. The cool thing with these is they're going to always be super sharp. So then we could have something like that. And that could talk about views aligned to something, I don't know. So you have all this flexibility, and then it's just a matter of turning them on and off, and then you label them, and here maybe you have a different icon, or you could have little people like viewing out there or something like that, or maybe this is about viewing over this space. And you got that. So maybe it's about views like that, unobstructed views, I don't know. And then you get all these different sort of little things, and when you look at it, what makes them strong is when you have the whole series together. So if you organize your layers right, you can use those tricks like we did with the renderings where you toggle the layers on and off from within InDesign, and then you don't really have to export 1,000 images and update them all the time. So that will help you with your workflow. And if you're confused about anything, you can always ask me. Like, so these you can grab like any of these really. Always make them vector though. Once you drop them in here, like do the image trace. This one will work really nice. Go to the options. Just tell it to ignore white on something like this, and then just expand them. But well, on this one you can see, you'll really notice the difference if we zoom in on them, because there's so many different types of shapes, where the less you go for threshold, it's going to be like smaller objects, and then the more you go, it's only going to look more for like bigger shapes. And then paths, where you want more or less. And depending on which one looks better or worse, you can play around with that. And remember, they don't have to be perfect, because watch what's going to happen to them. Once you get in here, that's all going to go away. And then that guy and all these guys are going to be like, oops, that big. Oops. So he maybe is over there. Trees maybe over here. That guy might be talking to him. Kind of try and tell a story with how you put your people. And then maybe we don't use black, we use one of our palette dark colors. Oops, I did that again. So see, that little amount is enough to tell a lot about. And then here you could literally make a whole series of these, and as you're talking through a presentation, you just say, here we have this shape, Or you could do one of those series of little blocks where you show how like you started with a cube, and you cut that edge off, and then you turned it, and then you made this whole thing. And the actual work is super easy. You go in Rhino, and rather than deleting every step of the way, as you created that cube, make a copy of it out in space, and then now you keep working on it. Now copy that out in space, keep working, copy that over. And so every time you do a big move, you just save a version, and then when you're done, you have this little series of all these little diagrams. You just export them, clean them up like that, and then you're done. And you have a whole series that tells like the whole story of how you came up with a form, or how you're addressing different issues. And you'll see once we start getting more of the advanced softwares that we can use to give you more visuals, you still are going to end up dropping them in Illustrator and cleaning them up nice. And this is going to be super useful for you, because the nice thing with these is you can print them really small, or you can make them big and use them to help like organize stuff. And see, they're always going to look sharp. They're not going to be pixelated ever, but you should still be able to read them when you make them really tiny.